Okay, so here's a little MIDI module for Companion. Works just with Companion and any sort of MIDI hardware you might have, or MIDI virtual ports if you're going from an application to Companion or back and forth. And it even works across the network. So if you're using Apple MIDI, it works with that, or RTP MIDI with Linux or Windows computer. So it's already set up for that. Over here, I'm have is a instance of Companion running on my local machine. And up here is instance of Companion running on my NanoPi, which is a little Linux app, sort of like a Raspberry Pi type of device. So we can watch what happens as we go back and forth. Um, the uh, the program supports normal sort of MIDI messages like note on off, control change, program change, aftertouch, pitch wheel, channel pressure sys and takes supports time code coming in. And I don't support MIDI sound control just yet, but if we turns out that somebody needs that, it's be really easy to add. Um, so in looking at how this works, um, basically I can press a button here and it sends a MIDI note on and note off message. And right now I've got it sending across the network to my NanoPi through um, Apple MIDI. And when I press a button there, you can see it show up on the NanoPi whenever I send a message. And you notice it has a little indicator showing me that MIDI is being sent out. And if I receive MIDI in, it would show me a green light there because that's a just a variable. So it's just simple variable showing me when MIDI is coming in. And looking at the variables there, you see whenever I send some MIDI out, it would normally change there. If I send it some MIDI data from Reaper, which is just MIDI time code, it'll format it as MIDI, it's as SMPTE and tell me the frames per second. And also shows up in a variable here that you can see what the value is. You could use that for something. As long as MIDI is coming in, the MIDI indicator will show up and shows true. MIDI's showing up there. If I was to change the frame rate from 30 to say 24 or something, it'll show me the frame rate there as well, 24 frames a second, if anybody happens to be using MIDI time code for something. Um, so that's receiving data from Reaper. If I notice when I send a message to to my NanoPi, it receives it, but I don't have a MIDI in and out, but added a couple presets for that. A MIDI in and a MIDI out preset. So now when I send to it, it'll show MIDI coming in. When I go back the other way, it's MIDI out. You can see the data coming there. If I set this connection to being the network, I can send data back and forth. So sending from here to the device, and notice that it's telling me the velocity of that button, 127, and back to 0. This is just a variable. See the note on variable there, so I can have it send a value. You can use that to determine whether something's coming in at a particular value or not. But also you can use this for recorders. So if you want to go, I don't know what kind of message is coming in and I need to figure it out from a device that you aren't familiar with, I can start recording here. And in this case, I'm going to send it a bunch of different types of messages. And when I send it those messages, I send it a note off and a note on, and control change message and pitch wheel message, program change, and some sys. So send a whole bunch of stuff there. Finish, and I can store that button here. So let's just put that somewhere here. Let's put it right there, replace it. So now all the stuff I just recorded is stored here as an action. And if I was to press that button, you'd see all those actions that I just recorded would be sent back out again. So that makes it easy to get data back and forth. So yeah, that's basically it. And if people want to understand how to send data over a network, I can maybe do a video on RTP MIDI, but there's probably lots of videos already on RTP MIDI. It's a free piece of software that you can put on a Linux or Windows machine to support that. Apple doesn't need it because it has it built in. Network MIDI is already built in if you need to be able to talk between an application, but it also supports, of course, actual MIDI hardware. So I've got a USB MIDI connector there, and it'll certainly work with that. Plus, you can create your own virtual MIDI devices if you need to talk to an application and you don't want to use the built-in system that's already in Apple. If you're using a Windows computer, you can use a virtual MIDI ports for local connections between applications. So there you go. Hopefully you find that interesting.